Good afternoon and welcome to FIRE, Black Press USA's live stream. Wynton Marsalis has a treasure trove of Grammy Awards, and among his countless other awards and accolades are a Pulitzer Prize, a National Medal of Arts, and the National Humanities Medal. He's also an NEA Jazz Master. Tomorrow, Blue Engine Records will release the Ever Fonky Lowdown, the latest Wynton Marsalis composition to directly address the irresistible cocktail of deception, racism, greed, and gullibility that subverts the global fight for human rights and corrupts the possibilities and promise of democracy in America and around the world. The Ever Fonky Lowdown will be available on several digital platforms, and it features the Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra with Wynton Marsalis and vocalists Camille Thurman, Ashley Pizzotti, Christy Dashiell, and Doug Womble. And I hope I said their names right. But the new recording also features narration from acclaimed actor Wendell Pierce. And y'all probably know Wendell from The Wire and Jack Ryan. And so he plays Mr. Game in the Funky Lowdown. Let's welcome Wynton Marsalis, the great Wynton Marsalis.
All right. Thank you very much, Stacey. It's a pleasure.
It's our privilege. Our privilege. Tell us about the Funky Lowdown.
Well, the Funky Lowdown is satire, and it's a spoken piece. It has rousing, happy, ecstatic music. It's narrated by Wendell, the great Wendell Pierce. We grew up together. He's 2 or 3 years younger than me in high school, and also he came to Juilliard in New York. He's really, truly my brother over all these years. The main character, Mr. Game, spouts a lot of very colorful rhetoric to gain the confidence of his group, who's called Oh Glorious People. And he has a dream vision of their greatness, the group's greatness, while he also robs them. And the way he does it is by exploiting a powerless group of so-called others. And the Ever Funky provides a blueprint for us today to help us avoid the propaganda hustle and to think for ourselves. So you think of Mr. Game as a combination of an evangelical preacher like Reverend Ike or Oral Roberts and Dolomite, of several political candidates I could think of who are very good at talking, but what they do is the opposite sleight of hand. A carnival barker, he has slick like a lawyer. He has a lot of different type of styles. He's got street level styles, and he has a educated game, and at the end he's just absolutely stone cold thug.
So that's quite a composition. How did you come up with this?
You know, really, me and my little brother, I have a little brother named Ellis, and we call him the Oracle. So we've been talking about this stuff for years. He's like 3 years younger than me. And I started to talk with him, and I would take notes on what he said. This years ago, 10 years, maybe 15 years. And I started looking at some of the notes me and him would go back and forth with. And I said, I wonder if I could turn this into a piece that could deal with the actual corruption that's in the world. So I thought, let me put this into a game of, and the game has 7 objectives. I always like numbers like 12 and, you know, like 12 months of the year, or 7, like 7 days a week, and this kind of thing, 5 notes of the pentatonic scale. So the game has 7 objectives, and it has 5 prizes, and he's going to offer a wild card to the people. And it's the 7 steps that I use to get over on you and fool you and make you go with me when it's really not in your best interest at all.
Wow. So it's kind of like walking down the streets in New York City, right? Somebody pulling out the, what's that, the 3-card Monty and stuff like that on you.
That's what this stuff is, man. That's what this is. It's like me and you get together with a friend of ours that don't look like us. And we go in the store and we start a fight and we start calling each other all kind of names, and then the friend that don't look like us go to the cash register. You know what I'm saying? It's like it's a hustle. It's being run on us right now.
Yeah,
me and you speak. It's a level of game. If you notice, just today Bannon got busted in a scheme to build a wall. Okay, that's the Ever Funky Lowdown.
Yeah,
it doesn't have nothing to do with everybody's running the game.
Right.
What it has to do is me relieving you of some of your hard-earned money, and me taking it and making you feel like you're a part of some winning team led by me against some other group of people that you've never encountered and don't know.
How about that? You know, they say art imitates life, right? But I mean, do you always incorporate life into your art?
Yeah, I'm a jazz musician. So, you know, our whole art is a collective creativity. And it's it's about how we all negotiate. Like me and you trying to negotiate this space right now, right? You waiting for me to give you breaks, and you're trying to see, well, where's this dude coming from? And you don't really know me, but you're trying to feel me out. And I'm also trying to see, am I talking too long? Like I'm trying to look at you, and look, we on a Zoom call, so I can't feel you like I would if we were it together. And jazz, it's the art of how a group of people get together and negotiate an agenda.
Yeah.
So it's listening and it's talking.
Yeah, and talk about that a little bit more. When we're in a pandemic, I know you used to crowds. I mean, you pack them in at the Lincoln Center and everywhere else. What's it been like for you and all musicians?
Man, for musicians, jazz musicians, it's really a struggle because our music is we record and we do everything together. So it's not natural to us to be in a place or be by ourselves. Or stuff that's segregated has a better chance. So the musicians, jazz is really a hard time, and it doesn't look like it's going to get easier because people can't gather, and we don't have special help set aside for us. For our organization, Jazz at Lincoln Center, it's like 120 of us. We put up so far over 300 things online, and we've reimagined ourselves online. We have 12 education programs, and we just have to be really humble and ask our people to support us. And we're doing the best we can to survive this time. We're very dedicated and we're for real, but it's causing us to. It's for real. We don't think we in a Disney movie.
Right. And so for you personally, with this pandemic and as a musician, does that add to your creativity, or does it in some way hamper your creativity?
For me, it doesn't affect my creativity at all, because for me, and everybody's creativity is different. For me, my creativity is very deep down. Like it's not on the surface. It's not topical. I wrote this piece 2 years ago, but you would think that it was written today for right now. And I'm dedicated to it. Since I was 12 years old, I've been practicing and studying and trying to learn and being curious, playing with great musicians, trying to become a better musician, striving for a higher level of understanding and more expanded consciousness. And I continue to try to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not but it's a rough period for everybody. So I'm more kind of just associated with, try to feel where the whole culture is going, how everybody's doing it. We're all in an extremely rough position. It's about to get a lot rougher. So, I'm having a hard time. It's not, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna be just as creative. I don't feel like I'm going to be more or less.
Yeah, and we know that, as I said at the top, you have such a treasure trove of awards. You have so much music in your repertoire. When you are performing, when you do a concert, how do you determine what you're going to play for that audience?
It depends on, because we have an orchestra of 15 members. We play a lot of music. We write a lot of new music. They all do arrangements. We have 11 arrangers in our band. There's never really been an orchestra like ours. We've played everything from the earliest music of Buddy Bolden and King Oliver and Louis Armstrong, to swing era music of Benny Goodman and Fletcher Henderson and Count Basie, to the expansive music of Duke Ellington. We were born in the spirit of the Duke Ellington Orchestra, because when the orchestra was formed, I was 26, and a lot of our other members were in their late 20s and early 30s. And then we had an older group who were members of Duke's orchestra from 55 to his death in 74, and they were in their late 60s and early 70s. And we had a middle group that was in the Thad Jones Mel Lewis orchestra, and they were in their mid 40s and to early 50s. So we grew up, we learned how to play this music in that tradition, and we grew up playing more funk and popular music coming out of the 1970s. And we have a lot of younger musicians who we have taught, who play in our orchestra. And we it just depends on the audience and the place and what we're working on and what we're doing. We've done a lot of collaboration. We've played with everybody from Alvin Ailey, American Dance, to Yakub Adi and Odada, fantastic musicians from Ghana, to the Berlin Philharmonic, to we played swing dances. We played in clubs. We've done a lot of playing, So
Yeah.
we just kind of go from there. And if somebody's music hasn't been played, we play their music. If we're on the show where we play mine, we play mine. We really share a lot of the creative space.
Yeah, again, we're talking with the great Wynton Marsalis. New material out, the Funky Lowdown. It comes out tomorrow. All the digital platforms, check it out. It sounds like it's just an amazing piece of work. Wyndon, Wynton.
That's good.
Yeah, there you go. Right.
You know what I'm saying? Ain't nothing wrong with that.
So, with the we've had a lot of lawmakers, a lot of senators, a lot of Congress people on our program. What would you say to these lawmakers about funding for music? Schools for years have been complaining about the loss of funding when it comes to the arts, particularly music and particularly jazz. What would be your message?
You know, your culture is who you are. It's your identity. So if your identity is not deserving of your resources, what is? But I find a lot of times once people get to a certain age, if they don't have that consciousness, man, you're just talking. I mean, I'm always advocating for the arts and for civilization. And with an art form like this, where so many great Afro-Americans have played it, and we as a people have never really embraced it and taught it to our kids and taught us how to hear it and understand how great Duke Ellington was and how great John Coltrane was and the sacrifices that were made by people like Thelonious Monk and Billie Holiday and Ella Fitzgerald. You know, even but I never give up on it. But we got to find ourselves at some point. And in the larger American culture, there's always been a willful rejection of the music's place in the culture, and a desire to replace it with pop stars from another country in many instances. Like how the Beatles going to have the greatest band in the United States of America? but it's possible if you're running from Count Basie or you're running from Duke, and you're successfully running from it, and that was successful. So I never give up on us waking up.
Yeah.
But it is a struggle. I never forget I met Ella Fitzgerald. I was young, maybe 23 or 22. I was getting a lot of publicity. I couldn't really play, but I was trying to play. And in my generation, I wanted to really be a real jazz musician. So it was a struggle. And I went over to her. I think she was in a wheelchair. And of course, I was very, it's Ella Fitzgerald I meet. I mean, I was as humble as I could be. Yes, ma'am, I'm from the South. I shook her hand and she looked at me and she smiled and she said, I know who you are. And I kind of even more, yes, ma'am. And she looked at me and she said, this is going to be a long uphill struggle, son. I hope you're up for it. And I thought to myself, I didn't understand what she was saying then, but I understand now. And I just always, it comes back to me because I thought, wow, that was interesting when she told me about what this is like out here.
Yeah.
And I never give up on us, though. I feel like we got so much great music that we don't know. And I think for the lawmakers, they need to try to figure out how to not be corrupt in general, not about music. I mean, I'll settle for them just anything that's not about who's supporting their campaign.
Yeah, and great insight there that you just shared with about Ella Fitzgerald. Other than someone like Ella Fitzgerald saying that those words to you, what else prepared you for that struggle?
Oh, man, my daddy was a jazz musician, so I grew up in the 1960s watching them play in clubs that segregated many times, clubs with 4 and 5 people in it, 3. And I would always be saying, why are you playing this music? Nobody wants to hear it. Then when we got in the 70s, I started to play and get more serious. My brother and I played in a funk band. And man, we played all kind of gigs, every kind of club, wedding reception, dances. We always had packed with people. And we'd be teasing our daddy because he really could play. I mean, we were kids, we couldn't really play. And we'd be like, man, we got all the people and nobody want to hear you. And he'd be like, y'all still can't play. And, I think just seeing him and his struggle growing up with it, I understood, that this is uphill. But with him, he was always saying this music is important because it has meaning and it has substance and you got to keep it going. But nobody wants to hear it. He said, that's even more reason to keep it going. So, I think seeing him do that is more, you can tell somebody anything, but that I saw somebody do that for that, the 17 years I lived with him, it stays with me.
Yeah. And they say artists starve, right?
He damn sure was fulfilling that for a long time.
Well, was there ever a point where you said, you know what, maybe it's not, either it's not worth it or maybe I should just go get another job and do this on the side?
Yeah, because in school I made good grades. So every people in our culture, New Orleans, to them the New Orleans Saints is culture.
Oh,
so
yeah.
They thought about a musician was, man, you gonna play jazz, something nobody really wants, not New Orleans jazz, modern jazz. Nobody really want to listen to. You don't need to waste your brain on music. Like, they didn't understand the consciousness of music and how deep the artists were. So I remember asking my daddy when I graduated, man, you think I ought to go into music, or I ought to have something else to fall back on? He said, well, man, my only advice if you decide to go into this music is don't have nothing to fall back on, because this is hard and you're going to fall back. And,
Wow.
This is a great thing. And I said, but you're the one who struggled with it. I mean, we had so little money when I graduated, any kind of grant you could get, I qualified for it. And he said, man, this music has defined my adulthood and my understanding, and there's nothing greater than this. So if you want to touch something that's this great, whether you're going to be recognized for it, nobody knows that. But do you recognize it? And if you do, and you can touch it and learn how to play it, it's going to give you much more than the recognition would be worth. And I went off of him. Then I was 17. And he never led me astray. He was very centered and focused, a man with a deep type of spirituality and a belief.
Yeah. And you talked about your family and everyone being in the music business, in the jazz business. What are those dinner table discussions like these days?
Now we don't really even see each other that much. My father passed away. My mama has passed away. Two of my brothers live in New Orleans. One is severely autistic, so he's never really spoken. I have another brother who lives in Baltimore. That's the one who I talked about this piece a lot with. My other brother lives in North Carolina. So we're spread out all over the place. But when we were growing up, we didn't really talk about jazz that much. We had so many just basic family problems we all have, man. Sometimes we have to laugh. One time I did a concert with John Faddis. We were in Avery Fisher Hall, a hall about 2,700 people. And he said, how many of us come from dysfunctional families? And he raised his hand. And then everybody raised their hand and started to laugh. So, man, we were trying to survive, man. My mom and daddy, that was like the coming out of the civil rights movement, the 70s, the community, people struggling. So we wasn't sitting around talking about train too much.
Well, you know what? Can't you make a case that all musicians come from somewhat dysfunctional families?
All people. People, me and my brother was going through some changes, and people was always asking me, what about you and your brother? And I would always say, do you have a brother? Or do you have a sister? There's just the human condition, man. Sometimes it's smooth, sometimes it's rocky. That's what everything is in a cycle. So yeah. It's struggle. Struggle is like life is about the type of grace you handle your struggle with.
Yeah, one of our esteemed publishers from the Baltimore Times, Joy Bramble, is watching this. She says that one of the highlights of my life was being invited to his home to celebrate the opening of jazz at the Lincoln Center. He played for us, gave us a signed CD. He was the perfect host. I couldn't believe I was actually in his home being entertained by the great Wynton Marsalis.
Oh, thank you so much, Joy. That's back in the days we'd be playing the blues at the piano and everybody be sitting in and having a jam session and stuff. So thank you for coming, and thank you for that nice comment.
Yeah. And Jack Coyle says, man, he's like everybody's brother. He says he is the standard bearer of this uniquely American music. I hope he knows, even during this tough time, that he is most appreciated. Talking about you, of course, Wynton Marsalis.
Man, I'm so appreciative. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, we are certainly appreciative of you. In fact, we've been talking about the Funky Lowdown, which everyone can get starting tomorrow. In fact, it's so exciting to know that we only have 24 hours to wait for the Funky Lowdown. But
it's Ever Funky. It's Ever Funky, man.
And for those who just really can't wait for a sample, well, we got one for you now. So here, for your enjoyment, the Funky Lowdown.
Ever Funky.
I said, everybody
The Ever Fonky Lowdown.
That's our staff, man. Jazz at Lincoln Center. It's like 120 of us. So
Wow.
it's all people who work, you know, we got a concert hall in the middle of New York City, and we work on jazz. You know, we got concert season, we got education, bro. They beautiful, beautiful people. This is a rough time.
Yeah, and love the fact that, you know, the mask, you know, and
But in the Ever Funky Lowdown, it means something different than what it is in that video.
yeah, we can't wait to see it here at all.
You know, in the Ever Funky, that mask is something that you put on, like when people take away so much of your privacy, that you have freedom. You give them prizes in Ever Funky, and each prize is called a freedom. But it's not really a freedom. It's like all these terms, you know, extraordinary rendition. They always come with some term for corruption that's not the word itself. So this is called freedom through constant surveillance, and it promotes fear through security. So I'm telling you, man, you got to be afraid. So your mask is the mask of absolute fear and terror. We have to keep track of you all the time because anything could be getting ready to happen to you.
Wow, it you know, it goes deep too. But tell me, when you are creating something like this, now obviously this is times that we've, you know, unprecedented times, right? Well, what goes through your mind when you're running into a situation? Obviously, we haven't had the coronavirus before, but when you run into a situation like this, unprecedented times, and you know that creative juice is flowing, what goes through your mind?
Well, you know, I'm working all the time. And first, the background of it is music. I've studied music my entire life. And in the Ever Funky Lowdown, the music is happy. So it starts with a march. So let's just take, for example, the form of it. This is a complex piece. So I put all of it has a libretto. So Wendell Pierce is speaking a lot like Dolomite or something. So he's speaking with that kind of vibe, but it's like a political campaign. So he's going to tell you 7 things. So I write songs to go with those things. The first thing he's going to tell you is, we are the greatest in the world, because he's flattering you into being with him. Now that's a march, like a John Philip Sousa march. Then the second thing he tells you is that, have you noticed it's a group of others? Now that's suspicious music, where you say they're over here, they're over there. The third thing he tells you is, something is wrong with these people. They do violence to themselves. They do all this stuff. This is horrifying. We have to do something to stop these people from doing what they're doing. Okay, that's a song that's happy. It says it may sound like the drums of war, but it's actually the stealing of money. Then it's him and his legacy of empire profit from all of the money that they make, but you have the honor of being on a winning team. So you know you participate in associative glory. And the fifth one is, we rewrite all the laws and the rules of freedom to make it seem like you actually attacked us. But don't worry about any of that. Don't be in the past, be in the right now. And they use all the people, the others' crimes as justification for us violating our own sacred principles. Then the sixth is the deepest one for us as Black Americans, is the losers always want to be winners. Man, you know, somebody beating everybody's behind in the neighborhood, you're trying to figure out how I'm gonna be with them. So whether you go along with them or whether you cuss them out and back away, one thing you're not gonna do is you're gonna stop fighting. So Mr. Game, he's saying, well, it doesn't matter what they do. You know, they can go along with us and make a fool out of themselves, like the minstrel show, or they can act like gangsters and tell us how bad we treated them. He said, I don't know why it is that people feel bad about that. For me, it's therapeutic. Tell me again, what did I do to you? Like, he loved to hear you complain about how you beat him down and all that. How, you know, and then the seventh of the things Mr. Game runs you through is that we, the people who won, have no shame or memory of what was done. Our vibe is, man, you know, we enjoy the suffering. And we say, this is the way of nature. These people didn't believe in God, or all these trivial things that they did is why we had to do this. And anyway, it didn't really happen, and it never happened. So I take you through those 7 steps. And that covers everything from Julius Caesar's letters about defeating the Gauls, to what Napoleon was telling people of Hitler's game that he ran, to several American presidents, and the way that they've just shined people on the left and the right, made you believe this and that was going to happen, and it wasn't about to happen. Like something like the Civil War, just have hundreds of thousands of white Americans in the middle of the country fighting, and they weren't going to own slaves. No way. You giving up your life for something, for what? They're staunchest believers in some other group of people that have no impact on them whatsoever, while you sending them out to get killed. And it's still going on right now. Right now it's happening. You're going to build a wall in Mexico, and you're going to blame Mexican people for you. Man, I mean, it's ridiculous. This is in America. It could be in Belarus. It could be any way you want to pick. It's a level of corruption and political corruption and abuse of people's will that we as a group of people continue to just let happen over and over and over again. And it always starts with the thought that you're going to achieve some superiority by putting some group of other people down, whoever that other group may happen to be.
Wynton Marsalis just broke down the Ever Fonky Lowdown. I just broke it down.
Well, you know, that's the 7 objectives. So if we talk a little longer, I'm gonna tell you the 5 prizes you won. So you know, that's the 7 things I'm running you through. And
wow.
If you can make it through those things and you believe in me, well, you know, you're a part of this.
Wow. Listen, so you've played some of the biggest, most impressive stages in the world. Was there ever a point that you walked on, you know, Lincoln Center stage or Kennedy Center somewhere, and you were just maybe a little bit intimidated?
Man, a lot of times when I was younger, I would be playing with orchestras. I never forget, I played in Vienna. I was 21 or 22. I was playing with an orchestra in Vienna, and I walked out on the stage, and I thought I was maybe the only Black person in Vienna. It was 1983 or something, and I looked up in the audience, and man, who was sitting up in the box, one of the boxes, but Art Farmer, one of the greatest jazz trumpet players of all time. Man, I was playing like the Haydn trumpet concerto, a piece of classical music. Man, I was so nervous to play. The fact that I was there playing with them in the hall, and Art was there, because I wanted Art to think I could play, you know? So, you know, it's times like that. I was real nervous. I played with Sarah Vaughan once. It made me extremely nervous. And I take it seriously. So, you know, when you walk out there, you always have some kind of nerves, because you want to be, you want people to go home feeling like they heard something. And all we walk out with is music. I don't have a light show. I'm going ball. You know, I don't have that much I'm gonna give you, but I got to play. Like, so I want to play my horn on such a high level, and we do as an orchestra, that you feel like, man, that was worth it. And sometimes we face an audience that don't necessarily know what jazz is, haven't been raised in it. And, you know, we have to play good, because I want the music to continue, and I want to be able to continue playing it. You know, I don't want to have to stay home or play some music that's not as challenging. So yeah, I take it all. I take it seriously.
Yeah, and you know, you mentioned that, and the fact that you guys tend to put forth your best foot when there's someone in that audience that kind of inspires you. We had Regina Bell on our show the other day, and she talked about how she was so intimidated when Prince sat in the front row of her show. So I guess we get where you're coming from. You began when you were very young. Do you feel there is the same type of interest in jazz among young people today?
Yeah, because when I was growing up, there was no interest in it then. So nobody young that I knew was interested in it, not the real music. You know, if you could play like some kind of instrumental pop music, yeah, they loved it. But when you start to really play jazz, no, nobody really wanted to hear it. And now it's a struggle, because jazz is the type of thing you have to teach your kids. It has to be a part of your culture. It's not easy listening. It's not entertainment. It's entertainment, and it's also enrichment. So you're not going to just, a small percentage of people will gravitate toward it, but you have to develop your listening habits and your listening skills. And we don't have education in the arts. So I think it's the same now. It's not worse. It's not worse.
You touched on something earlier too. In a jazz concert, just like in some ways like opera, you get a lot of people who will go to a jazz concert or go to an opera who is not versed in jazz or opera. How tough is that at times to get them really to get into the music?
It's tough if you're not curious, and it takes time to like music that has a development section. Okay, now if you have to follow what a musician is playing from point A to B to C to D, and you're used to listening to doom doom boom boom, you used to listen to the same thing repeated over and over and over again with somebody getting into it, man, that's a lot. Because I was there. I grew up listening to jazz. I never liked it. I like what's on the radio, man. The first concert I went to was James Brown, beside my daddy and them. And you know, Parliament, Earth, Wind and Fire, all the kind of 70s funk, that's what we played. So
Yeah.
I understand you got to go from that to following a Sonny Rollins solo or following Thelonious Monk. Man, you know, that's a lot to ask somebody to do. But there's something to be, it helps you develop your attention span. The music has memory, it's virtuosity. It can show you what a human being can do. It has a harmonic accuracy. There's so much in the music, but you got to get past that initial stage. And I mean, it's hard. That initial, you know, it's hard to get past that, man. It's like reading novels if you don't even feel like reading comic books.
Oh, wow. How about that?
You know, you got a long way to go, man. It's not giving you. Now we got videos, we got people who look good with no clothes on. Man, it's you gonna go from that being what you think music is to look at some old bald head, overweight dude playing a saxophone. Come on, man, that's a lot to ask somebody to do.
Well, he plays it amazingly well. Jack Coyle asks, he says, I wonder if he is confident. And I'm losing your question, Jack. I wanted to bring Jack. I thought it was a good question. I wonder if he's confident that jazz has roots in youth so that it will continue.
I'm wondering, does democracy have roots in youth so it can continue? So am I confident that democracy has roots in youth? Are they going to come out in the numbers to vote? Are they participating on the level I want to see them participate on? I don't know. With our youth, we have to understand they're not a group to follow. We lead them. If we don't teach them, some things they know, but most stuff they don't know. Because you know something about some technology, okay. There's so much about the human condition and being a human being. I'm not looking for 17 and 13, 15-year-olds to lead in that regards. And art forms deal with our human heritage. We have to teach younger people what things mean. If you look at the disarray of older generation, the type of lack of respect we have for one another, what we've left them, the way we've allowed pornography to just fill up the center stage, the way we have not protected them under the guise of following them so that we can make money off of them. This is the most marketed to, propagandized generation of younger people that's ever existed on the face of this planet. And are we protecting them? No, we're looking at them, following them. For what? So we need to teach our younger people. And we've I don't know how we let it get away from us, but we got a long way to go. And if we're willing to do that, I think, younger people will gravitate toward things with a certain type of depth. But if I'm a younger person and I'm being marketed to every second, my phone has everything I like on it. I'm curating my experience of life. I'm being told that just because I'm young, I figured something out. I'm going to be victim of it too. Remember what Mr. Game told him first, we're the greatest in the world.
Yeah.
So I'm telling the young people, man, y'all, younger people know, the younger people are this, I'm doing this for the young people. And the whole while I'm bullshitting them. So, because I'm selling stuff to them.
Yeah.
And I'm hopeful because I don't believe we went all this way to that's it.
Yeah.
But I need to see something come from the older and the younger people. But I'm not looking to follow them. I'm not looking for their taste to guide anything about music because they've been too exploited in that arena.
Mm. And musicians, many musicians we've had on this program have voiced their thoughts and opinions through word and through their art about the political system today, the voting. Tell us about your thoughts on that and the importance of the vote.
I think, the vote is obviously important. It should be up around 85%. And it's nowhere near that. And I think not just the vote, but participation in every way, and the well-being of your fellow person. And all the arguing and fighting is important too. This is democracy. It's a battle. You have to be willing to fight to achieve a balance and to present your point of view and to defend it and stay on top of it. Man, if you'd have told us in the 1970s we were going to end up with forms of music that disrespect and degrade women the way we ended up doing in the late 1980s and early 90s, there's no way in the world you could have told us that. Man, we spent gig after gig watching people hugging their loved ones, singing all the love songs we had then. But 10 years later, man, you got to maintain civilization. It ain't going to just maintain itself.
Yeah.
And, you know, the vote is important, but all participation is important. Every protest, everybody who's going to give some money to something, whether I agree with the people or not, the problem is so pervasive in our culture of corruption destroying democracy that anything you are doing to help helps.
Yeah, you said you mentioned just now about the 70s and not being able to believe what would come in the late 80s and the 90s. Could you have foreseen? Could anybody have foreseen what we see now coming out of Washington?
Well, you know, Washington was always suspect. you got to remember Nixon got elected after the Civil Rights Movement.
Well, that
you got to remember also that Eisenhower had said, "Beware of the military-industrial complex." He went out saying, "Y'all need to look at this. Look at what's going on." Now we didn't look at it. You know, we had our own struggles, but you know, we let those struggles down.
Yeah.
You know,
Wow.
A. Philip Randolph and them was looking for jobs. Walter Reuther, let's get jobs. We ended up looking for dreams. Like we got to be acute. There's nothing wrong with the dream. I'm not saying I'm mad at the dream, but let's have the dream and the jobs. I don't want the dream and I don't want the job. So, you know, we got to stay vigilant and we got to stay on top of it. And we got to actually create a better world for our kids, not just they have money to spend, but they come from something and they know something.
Yeah. We one of our viewers, Joy C. Ridley, she asks, how does jazz have a place in capturing the stories of our now, the same way jazz was in place during Reconstruction, the Civil Rights Movement, Black Power? Who in jazz will carry the story of Black Lives Matter and COVID?
Okay, first thing is jazz is an art form with classic dimensions. You can go to Mingus right now and it still has meaning. What we're doing, we're putting the Ever Fonky Lowdown out right now. You can check that out and see what jazz musicians are saying and thinking. Jazz is the art of collective creativity. That's still a thought that's far in the future. We've bought into a vision of the future that has been marketed to us. Like it's machines, it's AI, it's technology, it's video, it's all these things that are like putting the shiny suit on. Jazz, the new thing in jazz is going to be people are going to listen to it. The stuff Max Roach was talking about with Freedom Now, it still applies right now. The music has a classic dimension. We have a lot of younger musicians who are playing, but are people going to listen to them? Cecile McLaurin Salvant, that's a young, unbelievable singer in her 20s. She just wrote a long piece called The Ogress. Fantastic piece. Where's the audience for a serious singer that can do something? She don't have to take her clothes off and do something this. You have to just laugh when you look at some of this. Is that make it of the now? Like, what do people have to do? Jonathan Baptiste, he's on television, he's out in the street, he's marching, he's playing the music, he's doing things. And we have other younger musicians nobody's heard of. They're doing stuff. But for them to get attention is very difficult because there's not an appetite for the serious. There's only many times an appetite for foolishness. And it's a struggle for them.
Yeah. And, you know, again, we talked about the political aspects. We talked about Black lives, as this young lady mentioned. But what's the most important thing when you go in to create a song or composition? What's the most important thing that you take into that studio to do it?
The only thing you have is what you know. You know, what do you know? What do you feel? What is your knowledge and your experience and your musicians? Because not just you, we're jazz. We don't make records separate. Like it's about us together.
Yeah.
And what do we all know? And what is the consciousness of our music? What are we trying to tell people? Where do we come from? What is our memory? And what are we projecting into the future? And how are we mastering the now?
Yeah.
With jazz, we're dealing with three things: improvisation, which is the great I am. What do you know about music that allows you to make up these things in this moment with the challenge of harmony, form, and time? Swing, which is how do we nurture the space together? What decisions are you making that's allowing other members of the ensemble to sound good? And the intelligence of your decisions give the ensemble a momentum and a boost and a feeling. And then we have the blues, which is how hard are you about being optimistic no matter how bad things are? And if you come on with those three things, then you have a chance.
Yeah, that kind of where I was going next with the jazz and blues relationship, because there's a long relationship, close relationship there. And I wanted you to talk a little bit about that.
The blues is the foundation of all American music from the 20th century on. So it's an unbelievably deep form. 3 chords of Western music, fundamental 1-4-5 chord, pentatonic scale of Eastern music, waltz in a march put together. It's the form of a shuffle, African 6/8 rhythm. 1 chord in the first section, 2 chords in the second section, 3 chords in the third section. I could go on and on about what the blues is. Duke Ellington is the supreme master of the blues. He wrote more blues, put the blues in more context. He used to say, I dressed the blues up in their Sunday's finest.
Wow.
And you can't get the blues in any form you want, country and Western, rock and roll, any form of jazz, gospel music. Here, Mahalia Jackson is the most pious of all gospel singers. And who was she influenced by? Bessie Smith, the nastiest of all blues singers.
Yeah, how about that?
You can't, and even down to the day, we've gotten away from the blues a little bit, but it's still, you can't get it out of there. It's so deep in us, you can't beat it out with a stick.
When you're not listening to Wynton Marsalis's compositions, who do you listen to?
Man, I never listen to my own music unless I'm working on it. Like, it's like hearing your own voice. I listen to all the kind of greats. And remember, for me, I like development sections. So when I'm listening to music, I'm trying to see how the musicians got from one thing to the other thing. And recently, I'm always listening to, I've been listening to a lot of Mingus. I think of the things Mingus did, Meditations on Integration, Mingus piece I've been listening to. I'm listening to Mary Lou Williams. I think she's a phenomenon. Just how she played the piano as a young person, master of stride piano, in the great pieces she wrote, the Zodiac Suite. And I listened to Shostakovich's Seventh Symphony. For some reason, man, I started thinking about Shostakovich because he was terrorized by Stalin. And Stalin wrote a bad review of a Shostakovich opera that Shostakovich wrote when he was 30. So for Shostakovich's entire life, he was afraid Stalin was going to have him killed for something, because Stalin was killing everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And he wrote the Seventh Symphony in the heart of World War II. The siege of Leningrad, the city was on. They was pulling people out of the morgue to play the piece. Isn't that not an exaggeration? But I read a review of the piece in 1942 or something. It was on the cover of Time magazine. And I read that and I thought, damn, people were sophisticated enough to write a piece on the cover of Time about a Russian guy who was 36 years old at that time, 35, 36, 37, and a symphony he wrote in this kind of abstract language, and all of what it took to bring it to be recorded in America. So I was thinking about him, just kind of the struggles he had, and just how he felt when after Stalin died. Whew, man, because the human struggle is deep, man. When I saw George Floyd, when I saw all the people around the world connecting with him, I started to think about when the Berlin Wall came down. We were in Berlin at that time. All the people with the kind of fists and the "we shall overcome" and the universality of this symbology. And now that we're in another phase of what we need to do, and this time we're coming up to an election, and we need to be trying to figure out how we're going to get all of the white people who've been abused by this system to wake up and understand we are not your problem. You need to vote for people who are going to make sure that you can end up not being broke, using us as a foil. So I look over at Belarus and I look at all these different places, Mali, and places where people are saying, hey, we want to see another type of equality take place out here.
Wow. Beethoven said that music is the only art form that can instantly transport the listener into the mindset of the composer when the art was created. How much of the performance is art versus skill?
Well, art is skill. Art is skill. You may not have any training and you may just know things nobody knows. But one thing I'm going to tell you, something interesting about art. The best artists always play better than the ones who are not. So, they had to practice it sometimes. Charlie Parker practiced. I can start naming them for you. Beethoven, let's just talk about his playing. Man, if he could play his sonatas, He spent a lot of time at the keyboard. He wasn't
Yeah.
playing around. And it is true. I did an interview earlier today with Wendell Pierce, and I was telling the people, like, when we recorded Wendell Pierce as Mr. Game, he did the narration, and he worked 9 hours straight. And one of my younger staff members, not a musician, was just working on the session, and he noticed maybe after 6 or 7 hours, I started telling Wendell, yeah, man, that's okay, that was good. And Wendell was like, no, man, let's do this again. Let's do it again. And he kept saying, let's do it again. Let's do it again. And he was, and my younger staff member said, man, why did he keep up? Why did he keep doing it again? I said, I don't know. I guess it's for the same reason that my daddy played those gigs the way he played them with no people in. And Wendell said today in the interview that when he was doing Mr. Game, he was thinking, man, this is going to last past my lifetime. So the type of intensity I have to bring to this so that a person who hears me then can feel exactly what this is about. I have to put that much intensity in it. And it was something just to hear him say that. So I'm going to just go to his answer. That yeah, you can feel it because you have to be so serious about it that you're not topical. You're not looking to be popular. You're not influenced by propaganda. You're going to sit down and spend that 40 years of dedication. You talk about somebody like Beethoven, man, the struggles this man had, went deaf in his early 30s and became greater, didn't compose music for a little period, struggled his whole life with his health, and in deafness wrote much greater music and was more serious, put on a big concert of the Fifth and the Sixth Symphony and all this piece, and nobody showed up to it. And the list goes on and on of what he dealt with.
Wow.
You think that's Beethoven, man, you know?
Yeah. Now, I know your fans will probably argue about which is the best composition by Wynton Marsalis. Is the Ever Fonky Lowdown your masterpiece?
No, man. I don't look at it like that. I think the hardest thing I ever wrote was called All Rise. You know, the Ever Fonky Lowdown is the next thing we putting out. I put a lot of work into all of it. You know, it's a blessing for me to have my unbelievable band. They recorded all of that in a day and a half. And my staff, they put up all of the booths and stuff. My young ladies who came, who sang, Ashley and Christy and Camille. Camille was playing tenor sax in the band at that time. And what they did to sing that well on all of those pieces, which also was virtual. You know, it's not like what the recording is like. They gave an unbelievable dedication to that because their vocal parts are very difficult. Like they got to sing fourths. I thought y'all gonna struggle with this, but when we finished the session, just that they're in their 20s, you know, what everybody put into the Ever Fonky Lowdown was so deep, like what Wendell put into it, that our engineer and my co-producer is a guy named Todd Whitelock. During this period, both of our fathers passed away.
Wow.
And he was saying, you know, and we held up the release because his father passed away. We're waiting for him. He's been a friend of mine since he was in his early 20s. And we were talking about how tough a period it is, man. You know, we losing our fathers. He said, we gonna put stuff in this work though. Like we're gonna make them proud. Like, you know, so we work on stuff. We're serious. You know, we've been doing this a long time. And we got a lot of our lives and of life in it, because not just our lives, but all of us, when we come together and work with that type of intensity, it's the type of collective creativity that we believe can be seen in the world. And that is the vision of jazz that our country avoided when it avoided placing the Afro-American musician in that supreme national position that he had earned the right to be in.
Yeah, and Wynton, you are a teacher of music, a teacher of jazz. What's one of the first things you impart or you try to impart into a student of jazz?
Here's the first thing I ask my students at Juilliard. What does the United States Constitution do? Okay, the room is real quiet. What is the function of the document? Nobody saying nothing, just looking around. Okay, then after, you know, give us our rights, vote, you know, it's never a concept of responsibilities. It's always a right. I said, the Constitution is a leveling document. It's designed to help you figure out how to achieve balance and to maintain it. And it's to give agency to those who do not have it. If we don't know what the Constitution does for our American citizens, what's the chances of us figuring out what jazz does? So I want y'all to start from that position. Get you a Constitution and figure out why this document is important as a framework. And don't blame the violation of it on it.
Wow.
and understand that our music takes even more to understand and figure out. And then we start from there. So I always put them in the framework of my classes. I let them answer stuff and let them think and deal with their creativity and stuff, because they're going to teach me a lot too, because they see the world very differently from how I see it.
Wow, that is really interesting. You mentioned earlier how your father reacted to hearing your brother and you play as youngsters. How did he feel about the musician that you became and the many accolades and accomplishments? It's special that he was able to share in those, right?
Yeah, I think he was proud, but he wouldn't tell us. He loved all of his students. Like Terrence Blanchard was a student of his, and T has written, a lot of Spike Lee's movies. And Terrence wrote an opera. My daddy went to the opera. Man, he called me and talked for an hour and a half about what Terrence wrote. Man, if you'd have heard Terrence did this and Terrence did that, if you'd have seen this, Terrence did. He taught Harry Connick. Man, I heard this cat's record and he was singing on this and that. I could go down the list of students he had. Peter Martin plays with Diane Reeves. Man, he would look at our essentially Ellington High School Jazz Band Festival and competition we have every year, going in our 26th year, and all the kids around the country who come and play. My father would sit and look at that whole thing online and comment on individual players. So he was very generous in like his love of the music and of people who played. So I mean, I think he was proud, but he would mess with us. He was real serious. So I'll tease my daddy my whole life. I even joked with him about having COVID. I didn't know he had it, but it was always joking and messing with him. And me and my brother always accused him of cheating. When we used to grow up, we'd be playing football. He would be stationary quarterback, and it'd be me against my older brother. And whoever lost said, well, he was the quarterback. He's cheating to let this other person win. So my regret, I didn't see him before he passed away. I said, my one regret is I wanted to tell him before that moment, you wasn't cheating, man.
Wow. Isn't that something?
So, my daddy, when he was, I would mess with him, man. So, I just be teasing him because he was so. He called me. I was in my late 40s. He didn't like the way I played on the song he heard. He called me and said, "Man, I heard you playing on whatever the song was. I heard you playing on." He said, "Man, you ain't learned how to play on changes yet." He didn't like what I was playing on the harmonies. He said, "Man, you need to get to the piano and figure out these chords."
Wow. So he was serious, and so you just kind of like loosened.
Oh man, I mess with him constantly. I call him, I play something on piano, I work out something, and I say, "Man, your skills is eroding, you're getting old. I got you now." Boom, I play something. I stick in the range of what I could play. So I make him think I was a little serious. Then I try to play like a run or something that requires some technique. Of course, I'd be sad. Then he started laughing like, man. He always told me to learn how to play the piano. I never really learned it. So I told him once I got older, I said, you was always telling me, messing with me about learning how to play the piano. Well, let me tell you something. I never learned. I guess I showed you. All that kind of stuff, man.
Rebellious, aren't we?
I just play with him, man.
So you mentioned that the five, you're going to tell us the 5 gifts of the Ever Funky Lowdown. So we got a few minutes remaining. It's on you.
So when the people hear the 7 things, they think I'm talking about Republicans, but I'm not. I'm not talking about them. So in the second half, he gives you nonpartisan prizes. The first one, you get freedom of segregation, segmentation, and homogenization. You only get to be with your group. You don't have to see anybody else. The second prize is freedom from the intricacies of romance and the escalation of the domestic war on the battlefield of transaction. So you get to be in your home fighting as much as you want to your desire. You're free to do that. The third thing is you get prime time pornography and the commodification of community. You get people selling lists with your email and your name on it. You get to be, everything you look at is absolute filth, and you love it because then the filth is considered to be some type of statement of freedom. Then you get a freedom through constant surveillance. That's the one we talked about, and fear through security. And then you get a wild card. That happens in this case to be Fannie Lou Hamer. And she comes and tries to convince you to vote, to participate, to fight for the rights of all people, to be a humanist. And you, of course, believe so deeply in Mr. Game, you're not interested in Fannie Lou Hamer. So Mr. Game says, you don't even remember who Fannie Lou was. That proves that she wasn't successful fighting for freedom the way she saw it. Then the last gift that he gives you is freedom from thought and constructive engagement. You never have to do anything that does not have to do that does not have something to do with you or your benefit. So that is actually the death of democracy, when all your citizens can think of is, how can I do something for me? So that's the 5 prizes you get. And he constantly says to people, look around. Are we segregated? Is our school system segregated? Look around. Are we surveilled all around? Look around. Are we in court constantly? Are our families all messed up and we're all confused and constantly fighting with each other, men and women at each other's throats? Look around. Do we have a commodification of community of people selling us in our names, and pornography, everything comes out is more risky? That's another thing my students taught me. I said, man, what's the biggest difference between my generation and yours? I didn't know what they were going to say something about music. They said pornography.
Wow. Amazing.
That's what Mr. Game, that's the 5 prizes he gave you.
Amazing. The Ever Fonky Lowdown. Get it
It's funky.
Tomorrow. It's funky.
It's funky and it's low down. It's funky and it's low down.
Well, and you put, it's not F-U-N, right? It's F-O-N.
It's funky. You know, I was the youngest musician on the funk scene in New Orleans in the 70s, because I joined the band when I was 12. And we had a lot of bands, great funk bands. And I grew up actually playing funk music. So I used the swing pattern on top of it and use all the funk. I never use it in none of my music, because I felt like jazz needs to be itself, not subsumed by funk. It's a form of Afro-American music, but funk is not going to produce a jazz musician. You got to play jazz. And but it was always in my heritage, what I grew up with, what I grew up playing. So I use all the kind of New Orleans funk grooves, street beats, the meters, old funky, funky zigaboo drum beats and stuff that people from New Orleans know. And I put the swing pattern on top of it. And I use that language and vocabulary because it's ever funky.
Wow. Well, I'm going to leave you with a comment that I just saw come over from Jack Coyle. He says that he is a philosopher of hilarious sadness and reality. Kind of sums it up, huh?
Jack, I'm very appreciative. And I hope we all get out there and vote and participate. Don't just vote. Argue with your neighbor.
Well, Wynton Marsalis, the great Wynton Marsalis, we certainly appreciate it. We could talk all night, but we know we got to let you go at some point, which is now. But we really appreciate it. Everybody, funky, you say it.
The Ever Fonky Lowdown is Ever Funky. And thank you, Stacey.
Hey, thank you. And don't forget, tonight, tune in at 7 o'clock, same channel. Okay, am I going to say her name right? Mesa will join us at 7 o'clock tonight with Taylor Thomas. Thanks for joining us. Thank you, Wynton Marsalis. Everybody stay safe and stay well.
Yeah, you're right. Thank you.